Hey there, it's Tess Rouse and Christina Beatty. We're the co-hosts of Authentically Wild, a podcast that's here to shake up how you see life, relationships, and your healing journey.
This isn't your typical feel-good chatter. We're diving headfirst into the raw, real, and transformative conversations that can change everything you thought you knew about yourself and the life you're currently living.
Pulling back the curtain on our day-to-day lives, talking about relationships, parenthood, personal growth, trauma, and spirituality. Both of us have transitioned from lives that felt stuck and inauthentic to discovering a way of living that's raw, honest, and deeply healing.
The breakthroughs that we've had, they've been wild. And they're exactly why this podcast exists. We knew we couldn't keep these conversations to ourselves.
So if you felt lost, stuck, or like there's something more out there for you, this is your sign.
It's in the hardest, messiest seasons of life that we discover our truest selves. But here's the thing, the choice to dig in, that's all yours, baby.
So buckle up,
because shit's about to get wild.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, it is another solo episode with myself, Christina. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. Tess and I are so happy that you're here. If you are a returning guest, welcome back. And, we really hope that this podcast can help you anyway on the journey. We talk about a lot of different things on the podcast. And really our goal here is to, one, help you feel less alone, to help you navigate the challenges and the ups and downs of this experience, and help you find greater trust and empowerment on the path. Today, we are talking about a very special topic, and this is fears. If you have found yourself stuck in some fears lately, or you have an idea of what your fears could be and how do I begin to move through these fears, or if you're really good at moving through your fears, there's going to be something that you'll still be able to take from this. And I really hope that you'll be able to leave this episode with greater trust within yourself, and also in recognizing one of the most important things to understand with your fears is that on the other side of your fears are your greatest expansion. And two, we are not supposed to bulldoze through our fears. There's actually a really important level of safety we need to build within ourselves in moving through our fears. And I'm really going to dive into a lot of different pieces here to help you find that safety and that trust on the path. We're going to talk about why moving through your fears is so important. This idea of fear versus trust, that they are opposite experiences, and that moving through fears involves building a muscle within yourself. I'm going to talk a little bit around my journey in moving through fears, because boy, oh boy, have I had to move through some pretty big fears of my own to get me to where I am today. And I continue to have to move through fears. And the last piece is I want to leave you with how you can begin to move through your fears in a really safe and trusting way. And we're going to dive into a little bit about the nervous system and why that is such an important piece here. So why is being able to move through your fears so important? Because really, you don't have to. You could stay in the fears, and I think for a lot of us, we've either lived our lives being in fear, living in fear. And for some of us, it may be like that for a while still, or maybe there are some people, and you might know these people in your life, where that's going to be their life. I've really come to a place of acceptance in other people's journeys. I really learned how to accept. I'm not perfect at it, but I have gotten better at learning how to accept my journey as mine and other people's journeys is theirs. And I can't control that. But in my opinion, being able to move through our fears is actually a really important part of the process, because what I've come to know in continually stepping through big fears, big pieces that have wanted to cut me off from the next piece, what I've found is the expansion is always on the other side. Whatever that big fear is that you have, well, you're going to have all the stories and all the beliefs showing up of why it's not a good idea to move through that, why you shouldn't, and there's this piece around self-sabotage. I'm not a fan of that saying, but it is kind of a trendy word. I don't actually believe we self-sabotage, and you could view this in terms of your fears. I actually think it's self-protection, because whatever that fear is, something doesn't feel safe about that piece. And often what's on the other side of that fear is expansion, and often that expansion won't feel safe to certain parts within you. So it's important to be able to know how to move through our fears so we can tap into that expansion, because that's the yumminess. The other important thing to understand, and that you find greater trust in yourself when you can know how to move through your fears, greater trust in yourself, greater trust in a higher power, something that is holding you and supporting you on this path. And you also build confidence in being able to look back and be like, oh, I moved myself through that. And that is the muscle that we're going to explore in a little bit. The other thing I've really come to know about the fears and why it's important to be able to move through them, we actually think, you might think, oh, okay, whatever that piece is that you desire, that thing that you want to receive, that thing that you want to experience. We think, okay, we got to move through the fears to get to that thing, to receive that thing, to experience that thing. Actually, often, well, yes, you probably will tap into that thing or receive it or whatever it is moving through the fears. The magic and the medicine is actually in the process of you moving through the fears, because that's where you find the confidence. That's where you deepen into greater self-trust and trust on the path. And that's where you learn how to flow with such greater ease on this path, on this journey, because it's not easy. And so being able to flow with it actually is part of the magic, part of the medicine. So I want to talk about this piece around fear versus trust. They're really opposite experiences. I want you to think about when you are feeling fear showing up in your system, in your body, how that feels in your body. And now I also want you to think about when you are feeling trust in your body. How does that feel in your system and in your body? Very different experiences. And trust is actually a necessary part. If you're on your path right now, your soul path, your soul journey, I want you to think about this, because there's this saying, and I learned it from one of my teachers, one of my spiritual teachers. And she said, Christina, when you are on your soul path, there's actually no blueprint. And I was like, damn. Isn't that the case, right? Because when we're on our soul path, there's trust involved in that. And when there's trust involved in that, there is a releasing of control. And when there's a releasing of control, we don't actually get to know all the pieces. And what I have found is the more that I have allowed myself to trust in being led on the path, both by my soul and spirit, the more I'm able to trust in that, the blueprint actually unfolds in real time. But when we're trying to plan what that blueprint looks like, when we're trying to control, that's not when we're on the soul path. That's actually when we're on the path of ego. There's a big difference in these energies. And something that I've really begun to learn more about in my own journey and build more awareness around is when we are coming from a place of ego, and I mean this from the spiritual standpoint, like when you are in your ego, when you're in this place within yourself, think of your ego as these different parts that form out of fear to protect you. But when you are in your ego, you will be trying to control. You will be trying to manage and sometimes manipulate certain things. I don't mean that in a bad way, but just you're trying to control and manage and maneuver things. And there is a glass ceiling that you will hit at a certain point, whether it's in one area of your life or in general, your journey, where you actually hit your limit from a place of ego. There's a glass ceiling that you hit, because when we are in our ego, our mind, there is a limit there. The opposite of this being when you're in your soul, when you're allowing yourself to be led by your soul, this is limitless, right? Because the soul knows the things the ego, the human mind can't see. There's a greater depth, there's a greater expansion there, there's a greater awareness, a greater perspective, but we actually can't tap into that from our human, from the ego. And what you will find, and maybe you've experienced this on your path, I definitely did, and we're going to dive into this piece. When you are coming from that place of ego, trying to control everything outside of you, your external environment, maybe you're trying to control your career and your job, you're trying to control money, you're trying to control your relationships, it will only get you so far, and it's actually going to start to get really uncomfortable. You'll start to notice that constriction in your life, in your body, if you have that awareness, and you will be given two choices. You will be asked to move through that and get more into a place of soul and be more soul led on the path, or you will suppress and play small and stay in the comfort zone and stay in what feels familiar. That's more of the ego. And so think about that, right? Whether you're on the path right now or whether that's happened to you in your life, our ego, when we're in our minds, when we're coming from a place of fear, when we're trying to control, we're only going to get so far. And this is why it's so important to be able to know how to hold our fears. When we're able to hold these parts within us that are feeling the fear and be able to transcend this. But we don't transcend this from a bypassing way. We don't just skip over it or bust through it. No, we actually go into it. We go into our fears. We hold them, these younger parts within us that need to feel safe in order to then be able to transcend. In order to transcend, we have to descend within ourselves. And I want to talk a little bit here around some of the pieces that I have had to move through, some of these really big fear pieces. But before I do that, I want to give you an example of how this really showed up for me. Because on my path, on my journey, I really learned how to control all the things, which I can now see on a deeper level allowed me to feel safer. And in this controlling of the external, it only got me so far. It got me to a great place in my life where I had a career, I owned a beautiful home, I was in a marriage, and then I became a mom. And the universe was like, yeah, the ego is like, your run here is done, like of trying to control everything. Because when I became a mom, I realized I couldn't control these little humans. I couldn't control it anymore. And I hit my glass ceiling and everything started to become so uncomfortable for me because the way that I had been functioning was no longer going to work. This way of controlling everything outside of me. It was no longer going to work and it became so uncomfortable to the point where I was forced to then go in. The focus was external prior to that. I was then forced to bring the focus inwards and begin to understand more of these mechanisms, these protective mechanisms, my fears, my ego, all these things, and had to learn how to trust, how to connect more deeply with my soul, how to let myself be led by my soul on the path. And this is a dance that we do, right? I don't think we ever get perfect at this. I certainly am not. It's a muscle that we build in learning how to be with the fears as they show up, in learning how to deepen into greater trust, in learning how to allow our soul to guide us, and learning how to step more into expansion from a place of safety. It is a muscle that we build. And the more that we do it, the better we get at it, the better we get at holding ourselves through it.
Hi, my friends. We're going to pause here for a moment and just let you know if you're needing deeper support on the journey, some of the ways that you can work with us.
Hey, thanks for listening. It's Tess here. I know life's challenges can feel overwhelming, but through breathwork, there is a way to find clarity, release those stored emotions, and feel more at peace. I offer one-to-one group and online sessions, and I'm excited to share my upcoming digital breathwork audios, perfect for when you need support on the go or in your own time. So if this speaks to you, visit my website, tessrouse.com, or connect with me on socials at @HerUndearth. Let's breathe through it together.
Hi, friends. Christina here, helping you connect within yourself, develop your intuitive gifts, and tap into your deeper power and purpose is just some of the beautiful work I do with clients. I offer one-to-one deep dive soul coaching and one-to-one readings with your choice of an Akashic Record soul reading or an intuitive guidance session with Spirit. And if you're ready to go all in, I offer my Soul Empowered membership, which includes weekly live meetups, access to all of my online programs, my entire library of guided meditations, one-to-one support from me, as well as community connection with others on the soul journey. You can visit my website, rootsoflovecoaching.ca, or connect with me on my socials at christina.soulempowered. I can't wait to support you deeper on your path.
And now, back to the episode.
And so I want you to think about this in your own life. I'm going to give you some questions to think about here. Are you feeling this glass ceiling in your own life? Are you feeling like you're hitting the ceiling around something? Maybe this is your job. Maybe this is your relationship. Maybe this is something within yourself. Maybe this is all of it. Do you feel like you're hitting a glass ceiling where everything you're doing is not working? No matter what you try, what you do, you're spinning your wheels, still feeling stuck. This is often the feeling of a glass ceiling that we're bumping up against. I want you to think about two things here. This peace that you desire, this peace that you are wanting, is this coming from a place of ego? Or is it coming from a place of soul? And if we go back to what I said before, the difference in how that will feel right? And maybe it is coming from a place of soul, but are you trying to control how this comes through? Are you trying to control when it comes through? Are you trying to control the timing or what it's supposed to look like? So this is where we want to tap more deeply into that piece to see the energy that you're embodying around it, to see if it's true for you, to help you get some clarity with it. So I am no stranger to having to step through fears. I have a list of some really big fears that I have had to step through over the last 5 years. So many different pieces. And this is actually part of expansion. In order for us to be able to expand, we have to know how to work through the fears, because the fears, your ego within you is going to want to keep you comfortable because that feels safe. Familiarity feels safe for your ego, for the human you. Your soul does not need that safety. Your soul is like, let's go. Let's jump into the next thing. We're ready for this. We know the vision. And the human in you is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Fear, 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 fear. Let's stay in this box that we know. Let's stay in the comfort zone. And so in order to be on this path of expansion, and if you know, you know. If your soul came here to expand, you know. And so in order to really continue to expand on the path, you have to know how to hold yourself in the fears. Otherwise, the fears will keep you stuck. The fears will keep you in the box, the comfort zone of what's familiar. For me, some of the big pieces that I have had to move through, definitely separating from my children's father. That was one of the biggest pieces. I've had to work through so many deep money wounds. I had to move through releasing my teaching contract that I had with the school district when I was ready to step more into the expansion of my business, going out on my own as a single mom for the first time, going on antidepressants a couple years ago, and then coming off of antidepressants. All of these situations held so much fear for me, fear that I knew that I had to be able to move through for my greater expansion. You know, I've really began to see every time there is a fear that shows up, that is an opportunity and an invitation for me to dig in. One, for my deeper healing for that piece, because fear holds a denser energy within us. And so being able to go into the fears allows you to clear this dense energy within you, and it allows you to feel clearer energy within yourself, a clearer channel. So one, whenever fear shows up, I'm like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to clear, to feel lighter, to feel clearer within myself. And two, I know that whenever fear is showing up, there's expansion there. And this is where it's so important to be able to sit with, what does fear feel like in your system? And what does trust feel like in your system? And sometimes there's going to be both, and that's okay. I always say, when it comes to like a big decision, can you be 90%? And I talked about this in a past podcast episode. If you're struggling with big decisions, go back and listen to that one, because that one's really helpful. Because we are human and we are soul, we're always going to have both of those experiences within ourselves. It's not one or the other. It's actually learning how to integrate the two. And so you're always going to have fear. You're also always going to have trust and that soul feeling, expansion. And so how do you create integration between the two? And that has really been truly such a big part in my journey. When I was learning how to move through and supporting myself through the separation with my children's father, when I was releasing my contract, my very safe and secure teaching contract, and stepping into expanding my business, when I was making the very hard decision of going on antidepressants because there was so much fear around, is this going to mess up my spiritual connection? What if I can't ever get off this medication? What if it changes me? And then I went on the medication. There had to be some trust there. I had to trust. And that's where being able to have that connection within yourself, that place of deeper knowing, that feeling. And the more we make these hard decisions, the more we step through the fear, the more we understand and build this muscle of being able to feel what that feels like within ourselves, that deeper certainty. And so being able to trust going on the medication, and then being able to dig in deeper into my healing, and then knowing when it was time to come off, and being able to trust that nudge. This muscle that we get to build, it's such a beautiful opportunity in being able to hold ourselves through the fears in a really safe way. The muscle that we get to build within ourselves, it's like chef's kiss. Like, there is nothing that compares to it, in my opinion, because the more you learn how to do this, the better that you get at supporting yourself through it. It's not that the fears go away. Again, you're human. It's you become a master of your own experience in supporting yourself in the fears. And that's where the expansion is. That's where the medicine is. That's where the magic is. So how do you move through your fears? We're going to talk about this. There are some really important ingredients when it comes to moving through fears. And I want to say this, if this is really resonating for you, this coming week, so we will be releasing this podcast on Monday. I believe it will be Monday, April 14th. This week coming up on Wednesday, April 16th, I will be hosting a workshop called Trusting the Process. So if all of this is resonating for you, I highly recommend checking out this workshop, because within it, I go deep into some of the pieces that I'm going to be outlining here for you to help you find greater trust in the process, to help you learn how to surrender more, to help you understand how to hold yourself through your fears, to help you work with your nervous system, which is such an integral part in moving through our fears in a really safe, grounded, rooted way, in feeling trust. So if all of this is resonating, I highly recommend going and checking out that workshop. This will be launched the Monday, so it'll be in a couple days from when you're listening to this, if you're listening on the Monday. But let's dive in here around how to support yourself through the fear. There's some key ingredients here that are really important in order to do this from a place of building deeper self-trust within yourself and building this muscle. One, in my opinion, it's really important to have some connection to a higher power. You can call this whatever you want. God, the universe, source, spirit, maybe you work with angels, whatever that looks like for you. And this is where it's been really helpful for me. I love to pray. And I think sometimes we can think this is like a religious connotation. To me, praying is having a conversation with the universe, is having a conversation with source, is having a conversation with God, with spirit, and actually letting go of the things I cannot control. And often what I will say in that conversation is, whatever the worry or the fear or the doubt or the concern is that I'm having, I'm releasing this. Please take this from me. Please hold this for me. I cannot control this, and I don't want to hold this. And so that piece is really important. Because when we can have greater trust that there is something bigger supporting you here, that's half the battle. When you can trust that there is something else supporting you here, because you're not supposed to do it all alone. And you're actually constantly in reciprocal relationship with the universe. And the more that you can trust that and rely on that, the easier this path becomes. So there's that piece, is knowing when you're caring too much, knowing when you're in here too much, knowing when you're worrying too much, and letting go, releasing the things you can't control. But this doesn't mean you don't do anything. This is where your piece comes in. So you release the things you can't control, often the things that are external, often the things that are outside of us, other people, environments, people's actions, behaviors, timing of when things are supposed to come in, all of that goes over there. And here's where your job comes. One, you have to be able to regulate your nervous system, because when you are in fear, this is actually a contracted state and it pushes away anything that you are desiring. The other important thing when it comes to regulating your nervous system is that when you are open, grounded, rooted, clear, you're in receiving mode. And you're not just maybe receiving the things that you desire, you are receiving messages and guidance from your soul and spirit to lead you on the path. And then it becomes being able to discern the messages you are receiving, what feels true, what feels aligned, and taking action from a soul-led place, following the breadcrumbs from a soul-led place, not ego, not here's what I should do, here are the things I should be doing, here's what feels like the right thing to do based on others' expectations, others' opinions of me. No, from a soul-led place, from a grounded, rooted, certain, maybe exciting place within you. So prayer, super helpful when it comes to working through the fears, releasing the things we cannot control. Regulating your nervous system, so important to have that clear channel. Discerning the messages you are receiving and taking action from a soul-led place. So that is a great way to think about how you can be supporting yourself through the fears. The final piece here is I want to just pay special attention to when you are taking action from a soul-led place versus when you are taking action from your ego. It's so important to be able to discern how that feels. So once you have been able to move through the fears, you've regulated your nervous system, you've received the pieces that feel right and that feel true to you, and you're ready to take action based on that, because expansion involves action. But we can't always be doing the things, just like we can't always be waiting with our hands open, expecting the things to come to us. It is a dance. It's a balance. Sometimes it's about taking action. Sometimes it's not. And that's also really important to understand when it comes to expansion. When you've sat with the fears, you've regulated your nervous system, you've been able to discern the messages that are coming through, the pieces that feel true, then it becomes about, am I meant to take action here or am I not? And this is where you really need to be able to tap into how something feels within you. Is it coming from a place of ego? Is it coming from a place of soul? And I promise you, the more that you can sit with how something feels within yourself, whether it feels open, whether it feels closed, whether it feels grounded, whether it feels heady, whether it feels slow, whether it feels fast, whether it feels in trust, whether it feels anxious, the more that you can discern, reflect, feel, and build that muscle within yourself, this is where moving through your fears actually becomes so much less scary. You begin to trust the process. You begin to trust your abilities. You begin to build such greater confidence and trust within yourself and of the path. And again, it's not about having no fears. It's about how do you support yourself through them. That's where the expansion is. So I hope that this episode can help you. Please let me know if you have any questions as well. Tess and I are here to support you in any way. We hope that you have the most beautiful day. And if this episode did help you, please share it with others and leave a review if it feels in alignment, because that is how we get this podcast out to others who it might help, who it could support. Have such a beautiful day, my friends, and we will see you next week.